Today I want to talk about something that we don't talk about enough when it comes to product management. Yes, as much as product management is about building shiny, innovative, new and exciting products, an important part of product management is also making tough decisions on when to deprecate or sunset existing product. And deprecating products means sometimes those changes in the product are very difficult for customers to go through. I actually spent the first 18 months of my first official product role going through a product deprecation for a pretty big product that touched thousands of customers and hundreds and thousands of dollars in annual attributed revenue. And I was going through this deprecation at the same time as we were building a new product that was going to replace the product that was being deprecated. So I learned a lot about managing customers, deprecating products, how to build smooth and seamless migrations between one product to another, how to communicate with customers. So I have created a checklist that you can use and follow along with to talk about exactly what you need to do when you are sunsetting a product. I'm going to leave a link to this checklist in the description below so you can download it and use it for yourself. But in this video, I'm going to go through it pretty briefly. And if you have questions about any parts of this checklist, then leave a question for me in the comments below. So firstly, let's talk about why on earth you would deprecate a product in the first place. People probably spent months, if not years, building this thing and now you're just gonna get rid of it? Well, it's certainly not that simple. And to talk about this a bit more, I wanna look at the product life cycle. You might be familiar with this, but when you first launch a new product is when you are introducing it to the market. Hopefully over time, you see that product grow, you see more users, you see greater adoption and usage of that product, and eventually you will get to that product hitting maturity. Maybe that means you have solved all the use cases you want to, maybe it means you have most customers pretty satisfied with that product, and you don't really have an active roadmap for it anymore. Now, this by no means happens quickly. It could take 10, 15, 20 years, maybe even longer, especially for a SaaS product, to hit maturity. But then there are always products that don't live on beyond that maturity and go into decline. You may have also heard about how products go obsolete. I think that's more relevant for physical products, but nonetheless, in software, you can see decline in a product's growth, its usage, its adoption, and I guess just in terms of its life. Now, through some research, I found products that you might have used or come across that have actually been deprecated over the last 5-10 years. And you may never have really thought about it as a deprecation because a lot of these products were probably replaced by something much better. And so as a user, you didn't really feel the impact of it. And that's exactly what you want. But for the product teams managing that, they were essentially dealing with a product that was being sunsetted. So what are the reasons why a company might decide to deprecate a product? One reason is that the product didn't see as much adoption or as much growth or usage as the company expected. But basically the product wasn't being used by as many people and in the ways that we wanted, so there isn't enough value in keeping it around. Being second to that, maybe the product had a really high maintenance cost. Even if you have a product that you are not actively developing, maybe you're not, releasing new features every month, there is still a cost to keeping it on and maintaining it. And sometimes you need to evaluate whether the benefit of keeping a product for a few customers is worth the high cost that it might involve to keep it on. Third, another reason might be because the product is being superseded. And this is probably the best scenario when you are deprecating a product, is that you are coming out with something far better. It might be a better user experience. It might be a new product that has a lot more features, functionality, whatever the reason is, it is being replaced, and that is the key. It's being replaced by something, so customers might not use whatever they're using now, but there will be an alternative for them to go to. Now, of course, if you're replacing a product with something else, chances are you're probably gonna have to go and build that new product. And that comes back to all of the exciting things we know about product management and building new products. There could just be other business reasons. Maybe the business has changed direction and they no longer want to pursue a particular market that this product is in. Maybe this product has just been around for far too long and it's a legacy product and you don't have the right technical skills or people in the company to maintain it, and it's really hard to acquire new developers, and it's really hard to hire new developers because the language this product was built in is no longer really around. So there are lots of other business reasons and even technical reasons why it doesn't make sense to keep a product around. What do you actually do when it comes to deprecating a product? Now, chances are you won't be doing this on your own, but oftentimes it can fall on the product manager to come up with a general plan for how you want to go about sunsetting the product. So number one, you need to identify who is using the product. You need to identify the number of customers you have, who those customers are. Ideally, you want to identify what their usage patterns are, what features of the product they are using, and how much money they are paying you. Understanding who is using the product will allow you to quantify the impact it's going to have on the business and on some of these customers. This is important for obvious reasons. If customers are going to be impacted by a big change that you are making or something you are taking away, you need to know who those people are so you can communicate to them, look after them, and come up with an appropriate plan for them. By understanding how much revenue is coming in from these customers, you can also understand how significant of a change this could be to the business. If this is a product that is bringing in 50% of your revenue, that is going to be a pretty significant impact, and that means there is even more need to make sure this deprecation goes smoothly and you leave customers pretty happy at the end of the day with probably a better alternative. Versus if it's a product that's maybe just bringing in 5 to 7% of revenue, maybe that's not as significant and it's a revenue stream the company doesn't even want to continue to expand, and therefore the significance and importance of this deprecation would be a lot different to something that was bringing in a lot more revenue, if you know. By identifying customers, you'll also see if there are any large and strategic customers using this product. These are customers that you do not want to lose, that are very meaningful strategically to the company. And oftentimes the company will go out of their way to look after these kinds of customers. So make sure you identify who the customers are, because that's going to inform a lot about how you're able to look after them. Number two, you want to segment your customer list. So this kind of relates to what I was saying before, but not all of your customers will be using the product in the same way. So if you have a customer list of 6,000 customers who are using the product, then you might not want to treat all of them in the exact same way. Some of them might only have the product installed, but they're not actively using it, versus others might rely on the product every single day and utilize every single feature that it has. So you need to find the appropriate way to categorize and segment your customers, and based on that segmentation, you can come up with a different plan for how you want to help manage them through the process of the deprecation. So customers who are very high usage, you want to make sure they're looked after, you want to make sure minimal impact to them, versus ones that maybe aren't really using the product or use the product on very odd occasion. That's something that you can kind of leave as a lower priority. So actually that's a great way to describe it. This allows you to prioritize customer segments that are going to be most impacted by the deprecation. Segmenting customers is also useful in terms of the different communication you send them. The communication you send to someone that barely uses the product is hopefully going to be different to the communication you send to someone who literally uses the product multiple times a day. So segmenting your customers will actually come in very useful as a tool for other things you're going to do throughout this deprecation process. Now for points one and two, how are you actually going to get this information? You probably have a database in your company of where you retain customer information. Maybe it's a CRM, or maybe it's some other kind of database where product information is stored. Typically, product managers can extract customer information by themselves. If it's from a database, it will be a matter of pulling some SQL queries together and extracting that data from the database. If it's more complicated than that, then you can work with your engineering team to get that customer data. You can also work with other teams in the company to try and correlate your product customer data with more business data. So for example, if you don't have access to how much money a customer is paying you every single month, maybe that's something that another team has access to, and then you can kind of correlate those two things together. But yeah, this is all very dependent on the company, the product, how you store this information, etc. Number 3, you need to come up with a plan for how you are going to actually deprecate this product. Now, this is something you will work with engineering on, because they will actually have to do some technical tasks to literally stop the product from working. But product managers should have input to that. There are lots of things involved in actually deprecating the product. One thing is just in terms of how you're going to approach the deprecation. Chances are you're not going to just switch it off one day. So how are you going to do that? Are you going to unlist it from somewhere so it's no longer available on a website? Are you going to prevent new customers from signing up to the product? What's going to happen on the day of deprecation? What if someone tries to access the product on that day? Are they going to see some kind of message? Engineering might have to jump into the code to turn something off, to turn off monitors, to manage error handling, and then ultimately they'll have to do a bunch of cleanup tasks to actually get rid of the code, because that can be a security risk if you just leave old code sitting there, etc, etc. That's for engineering. This is going to be very dependent on your given product, so I can't really recommend too much, but I will leave some general tips in the checklist for different approaches you can take from a product standpoint to get to the point of actually turning off the product. Number 5 is coming up with an alternative solution for customers. So if this is a product where you care about the customers and you don't want them to feel the pain of you taking something away, you need to provide them some kind of alternative. So one, that could be an alternative product that you are building. So it is a new product that they are going to migrate to. In that case, you need to go away and build that product itself. And if you are building a new product for them to move to, you need to come up with a migration process. So that basically means, are they going to have to take some kind of action to set up the new product, or is there a way in which you can automate that for them? Again, you want to get creative. This is something to work with your engineering team on, but it's really important to try and optimize user experience when it comes to these kind of changes. Or secondly, maybe there are some other kind of workaround that customers can use. Maybe you have some kind of third-party provider, a third-party app, and that might fulfill the gap that your product leaves. Chances are, most likely you will have a very good idea of what the alternative is, because it can often be the trigger for a deprecation of a product in the first place. If you plan to build something new, if it's a legacy product that is going to be rebuilt in a new way, if it's a product that the company sees no future with, maybe you don't need an alternative product, all that kind of stuff. Number 5, you need to inform customers about this change, and you need to inform them with plenty of lead time. This depends on the company and the policies you have, but in places I've worked, customers are often given a 6-month heads up at least when there is a big product change, especially when something is being taken away or being replaced by something and it's quite significant. So you need to make sure you work back from your deprecation date and you have the appropriate lead time within which you are actually communicating to customers. Now, when it comes to communicating with customers, there are lots of different ways to do this. But to go over some of them now, email is an obvious one. But keep in mind that people don't really open their email as much as you might think these days. In my experience, we had like a 2% open rate on all of our sunset emails. And that made us feel like we had no idea if customers even knew this change was coming because they were not reading the comms that we were sending them. Another way is putting messages in product. This is a great way to do it. And I'm sure you've experienced this in the products that you use every single day, where you know customers are interacting with something on a daily basis. Put in a little banner or put in some kind of prompt in an existing product that tells them that a change is coming. You'll also need to have some kind of announcement on your website or your product documentation, basically anywhere that people would go to read and find out about the product. You want to make sure information is there with everything that they need to know. And another way for really large strategic customers who might have a customer service manager or an account manager, you can use them as a way to relay the message to the customer. Another one is holding a webinar. Hold a webinar that people must register to, in which they can ask you in which they can ask you questions directly about the deprecation. Give them a time and a place to come so they feel like they have had access to the right people to help them with this process. It's educating, and number 6 is informing and educating your internal customer support teams. Now, why do we want to do that? As soon as customers find out that there is a change happening that they don't want, they're most likely going to contact your customer support team. So you need to make sure your customer support team is armed with all of the information that they could possibly need about this change. What is the change? When is it happening? How is it going to impact customers? What action do they need to take? When do they need to take it by? Is there an escalation process? Like, every single question you could think of, you need to make sure you arm your customer support team with that. And then you can also have a channel internally, whether it's on Slack or Teams, a channel by which the customer support team can raise questions with you when they don't understand something. You want to give them some training on how the product change will happen so that they can help customers if they hit problems. Your customer support team is going to be an extremely important line of defense for you. So if you invest the time up front in educating and upskilling them on this change, then that's going to be a lot better for you in the long run when it actually comes time to deprecate. And lastly, implement monitoring so that you can track how customers are going when the deprecation time comes. So you want to track them either migrating off the current product onto the new one, or you want to monitor them migrating off the current product to some other alternative or whatever it is. But you need to find a way to track progress. Metrics and progress are really important to a lot of product decisions, and you need to find ways to collect that data. Just because it's not a new product doesn't mean data is not important. It is important. You'll want to understand things like how far through the deprecation are you? On average, how long is it taking customers to go through the process if you do have one? So that's how you can navigate sunsetting or deprecating a product. I have 2 tips to end off with. One is to make sure you have some kind of exception handling process or a process to give customers an extension to the deprecation date. You can be guaranteed there will be people who either miss the communication, who don't want to take action, who have other issues in their business and they can't prioritize this. There will be reasons why people cannot prioritize this deprecation in time. So you want to account for and have a buffer for managing and helping them. And secondly, incentivize customers in some way to do what you need them to do. You can incentivize them by, I don't know, giving them a $100 gift card if they deprecate by a certain date. You can incentivize them by giving them a month off your product. Get creative. Incentives are important because oftentimes changes like this are not something customers asked for. And you're gonna have customers complain about that. They're going to say, why should I take some action when I didn't want this? And you're forcing me to do it. So you can make it an extremely user-friendly and seamless process. Unless it's completely automated, customers are gonna find a way to complain about whatever it is that they have to do. So that's all I have to say for now about deprecating and sunsetting products. Again, it's not something we talk about enough when it comes to product management. So I hope this video serves as an incredible resource for you if you ever have to go through a product deprecation process, because it is difficult and there is not a lot of information out there about it. So please share this with someone who might be going through it soon. And please leave any comments you have below about this process and I will be sure to answer every single one of them. Anyway, that's it. If you got this far, thank you so much for watching and I will see you in my next video.